She blocked the door. Not with anger. Not with accusations. Just her back pressed quietly against it. Her ex-wife's sister. A woman Alfred had no reason to trust anymore. A woman who owed him absolutely nothing. Standing between him and the only exit. Looking at him with eyes that saw straight through every wall he'd spent 14 months carefully building. He had come to drop off a box. 6 pounds of his ex-wife's belongings. A 5-minute errand. In and out, no feelings, no history, no conversation longer than a polite goodbye. But she had noticed something. Something he hadn't told a single soul. Something he hadn't even admitted to himself yet. And instead of letting him walk out that door the way he always did, composed, controlled, completely alone, she pressed her back against it, looked him straight in the eyes, and said the 7 words that stopped Alfred Hale completely cold. "You're not leaving until you tell me what's wrong." Not a question, not a request, a quiet, unshakable certainty. He was a man who had survived losing his father, a crumbling marriage, and a career betrayal, all with a steady face and a rehearsed, "I'm fine." He had walked away from every hard conversation for 14 months without looking back. But this woman, his ex-wife's sister, had blocked the door, and something in the way she stood there told him that this time, walking away wasn't going to be that easy. What had she seen in him that everyone else had missed? What was really wrong with Alfred? And why was she, of all people, the only one willing to stand in the way long enough to find out? The drive over had been quiet. Too quiet. Alfred Hale held the steering wheel a little tighter than he needed to, the cardboard box riding shotgun sealed with a single strip of tape that he'd pressed down 3 times to make sure it stayed shut. 3 times. He'd noticed that as he was doing it, and had hated himself a little for it. He passed the elementary school where Theo had started 1st grade. He passed the gas station where he and Rachel used to stop for coffee on Sunday mornings. He passed the maple tree that turned bright red every October. And every October, Rachel had taken a picture of it. And every October he had teased her about it. And now it was October again, and there was no one in the passenger seat to laugh. He pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same. That was the thing about houses you used to live in. They never had the decency to look different. He got out. He carried the box. His hands were steady. He told himself that twice. He pressed the doorbell with his elbow, and the door opened. And it wasn't Rachel. Of course it wasn't Rachel. Rachel was in Denver? He'd checked. He'd checked twice. It was Diane. She stood there in a soft grey sweater, both hands wrapped around a coffee mug, her hair pulled loosely back like she hadn't planned to be seen by anyone today. She looked the same. Maybe a little quieter around the eyes, but that might have been the light. "Alfred," she said. Not cold, not warm, just steady. The way she said everything. "Hey, Diane." He held up the box like a shield. "Rachel asked me to drop this off. Last of her stuff from the apartment." Diane looked at the box, then back at him. She stepped aside. "Come in, I'll take it." "I don't want to." "Come in, Alfred." There was nothing forceful in her voice. There never was. That was the problem. Diane had always been the kind of person who said things once and meant them, and somewhere in 14 months of not seeing her, he had forgotten how that felt. He came in. The door clicked shut behind him. He didn't know it yet, but that small, ordinary sound was about to change everything. The kitchen smelled different. That was the first thing that hit him. Not the layout, not the light, not the photos still sitting on the fridge. It was the smell. Rachel used to burn this lavender candle every afternoon, religiously, like it was a small daily prayer. The whole house used to smell like her. Now it smelled like coffee and wood polish and something faintly herbal. Diane's tea, probably. And that absence somehow hurt more than any photograph could have. He set the box down on the kitchen island. 6 pounds of a marriage. A wedding album he hadn't been able to throw away. A scarf she'd left in his hallway closet. A small wooden frame from their honeymoon in Charleston. He'd labelled the box neatly. He'd pressed the tape down 3 times. He'd done all the right things. And now it was sitting on the counter of a house that used to be his. And he was standing in a kitchen that used to be his. And there was a woman he hadn't seen in over a year staring at him with those quiet, patient eyes. And his hands, just for a second, started to tremble. He shoved them into his jacket pockets. But Diane had already seen. "Coffee?" she asked, already moving toward the pot. "I'm good. I should head out." "Okay." She poured a cup anyway. Her own, slow and unhurried. "How's work?" The question was so ordinary, so normal, so small, and yet it landed somewhere in his chest he wasn't ready for. "Fine," he said. "Busy, you know." She nodded slowly, studying the rim of her mug. "And Theo?" "He's great. He's really great. He's been doing this thing where he—" Alfred caught himself, closed the door on the sentence before it could go anywhere real. "He's good. He's really good." Diane looked up, not sharply, just looked. "And you?" she asked. "I'm fine." She held his gaze for 1 heartbeat. 2. 3. "Okay," she said, quietly. He reached for his keys. "Tell Rachel I left the box. Everything's labelled." "I will." He turned toward the door. He almost made it. He had his hand on the brass handle, the metal cold under his fingers, the late October light streaming through the window beside the door in soft gold bands. He could already smell the air outside. Leaves, distant wood smoke, freedom. And then he heard her set the mug down. Not loud, just deliberate. The soft ceramic clink of something being placed with intention. Then footsteps, even, unhurried. He turned slightly, and that's when he saw her walk past him. Not stopping him, not grabbing his arm, not raising her voice, just stepping around him calmly, planting her back gently against the door, folding her arms loosely around her chest, and looking at him with eyes that were softer than he expected, and steadier than he could bear. Alfred blinked. "What are you doing?" "I noticed something." "Diane." "Your hands." He looked down. They were still now. Of course they were still now. "I'm fine," he said. "You're not leaving until you tell me what's wrong." The room went so quiet he could hear the kitchen clock above the stove. Tick, tick, tick. The October sun crept across the hardwood floor in slow, warm streaks. Somewhere outside, a child laughed, high and bright, and somewhere upstairs, the old radiator pipes ticked softly inside the walls. He let out a breath that was supposed to be a laugh, and came out as something else. "Diane, come on. I mean it. I just came to drop off a box." "I know." She didn't move. He shifted his weight. "I'll just use the back door." "You won't." He wouldn't. He knew that. And somehow, so did she. He stared at her. At this woman he had known for 9 years. At the dark-haired sister who had stood next to Rachel at their wedding, holding a small bouquet, smiling at him like he was about to become her brother. At the woman who had brought him soup the first time he got the flu after they were married. At the woman whose fiancé David had died in a car accident 2 years ago, and who had walked into the funeral with her chin up, because that was who she was. He stared at her, and he understood, slowly, terribly, that Diane Carter wasn't doing this to corner him. She was doing this because she had once stood exactly where he was standing, and no one had stopped her. "This is ridiculous," he said. Probably, she agreed. His jaw tightened. Diane, you can stand there pretending you're going to leave, she said, quietly, calmly. Or you can sit down and tell me what's actually going on. But Alfred, I'm not opening this door. Not until you do. He stared at her for a long moment. The clock ticked, the sun moved, and something in his chest, something he had been holding closed for 14 months with both hands and gritted teeth and the careful, exhausting weight of a man who refuses to break, began to crack. Not all at once. Just a hairline. Just enough. He turned slowly, walked back to the kitchen island, set both hands flat on the cool stone counter, stared down at the crack in the tile by the sink, the one he'd always meant to fix, the one he'd never gotten around to fixing, the one that had outlasted his marriage. I'm fine, he said again, but this time his voice cracked, and in that small, fragile sound, in that one syllable that betrayed him, Diane heard everything she needed to hear. She didn't move from the door. She just waited. The kitchen was quiet for a long time. Alfred kept his hands flat on the counter. He didn't trust them anywhere else. The crack in the tile near the sink stared back at him, that small, stubborn flaw in a kitchen that used to be his. And somehow, looking at it, the words finally came. They gave the promotion to someone else. He said it flat, almost bored, like he was reading it off a wall. I worked 4 years for it. 3 of the firm's biggest projects. Weekends, holidays. I missed Theo's first soccer game because my boss wanted a structural report on his desk by Monday. His jaw tightened. They gave it to a guy who's been there 18 months. They told me I wasn't a people person. Diane didn't speak. She just leaned back against the door and let him fill the silence. My dad died 2.5 years ago, Alfred said. The words came easier the second time. I threw myself into work because work made sense. You put something in, you get something out. Numbers don't leave you. He swallowed hard. And then Rachel left, and I understood why. I really did. She told me she felt invisible, and she was right. I had stopped showing up. I had stopped being there. I was a ghost in my own marriage. His voice caught. But understanding why someone leaves doesn't make the house any less empty when they're gone. He looked up. His eyes were wet. He didn't bother to hide it. I keep waking up, he said quietly, and the weight is still there. I drive Theo to school. I smile at my co-workers. I show up. I do the work. And nobody knows. Nobody asks. And the thing is, Diane, I don't even know what I would say if they did. Diane stepped away from the door at last, slowly. She walked across the kitchen, picked up the second coffee mug she had quietly poured 10 minutes ago, and slid it across the counter to him. He looked at it, then at her. After David died, she said softly, I went back to work in 2 weeks. I answered every sympathy card. I organized his clothes. I told everyone I was fine. She gave a small, tired smile. It took me 11 months to fall apart. And when I finally did, it was in a grocery store parking lot, in the rain, over a box of cereal he used to like. Alfred looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, he saw her, not as Rachel's sister, not as a face from a wedding photo, but as another person who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. Grief doesn't wait for a convenient moment, Diane said. It waits for a quiet one. And you, Alfred, you haven't been quiet in 14 months. He let out a slow breath. The tightness in his chest, the fist that had been clenched there for over a year, began, finally, slowly, to loosen. I don't know where to start, he admitted. You already did, she said. You said it out loud. She slid a small folded piece of paper across the counter. A name, a number. She's a counselor. She helped me. She doesn't perform at you. She just listens. Alfred picked it up, held it for a long time. Then he folded it once and slipped it into his shirt pocket, close to his chest, where his heart was finally, quietly, beating again. He called Theo from the car. His son's voice came tumbling through the phone, bright, breathless, 7 years old and full of fossils and cartoons and dogs at Grandma's house. "Dad, can we go to the Science Museum next weekend?" "Yeah, bud. Absolutely." "Can we get the big pretzels?" "We can get 2. Theo laughed, that clean, uncomplicated laugh that had been the only sound keeping Alfred upright for 14 months. Then a pause. "Dad, are you okay? Your voice sounds different." Alfred looked through the windshield. The October sun was setting low over the rooftops. Gold light, a maple tree, blazing red, just like the one Rachel used to photograph. He smiled, a real, tired, honest smile. "I'm going to be okay, buddy." And for the first time in 14 months, he believed it. 3 days later, he called the number. Her name was Ellen Marsh. She had a calm voice and a small office with good light. She told him the first session was just talking. No agenda, no pressure. He said that sounded fine. He meant it. Some people spend years waiting to feel ready to heal. What they don't realize is that readiness rarely arrives on its own. Sometimes it has to walk into your kitchen, set down a coffee mug, and quietly refuse to let you leave the room. Not to fix you, not to save you, just to remind you that you don't have to carry it alone. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who finally let someone see them and discover, to their own quiet surprise, that being seen is exactly what saves them.